Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Happiest Hour Live. I am Dan Lerner.
And I am Alan Schlechter. That was what he was signaling. I am.
No matter where you are right now, if things are wonderful or if things are challenging, which we know there are for many of us out there, we are striving each week just to help make life even a little bit better. We'd like to thank, first and foremost, thank the Krame Center for Mindful Living for their generous sponsorship of this show. And if you'd like to check them out or look for future episodes, because each episode must be registered individually, check out thecramecenter.org. That's thekramecenter.org. So let's dive in. If you were here last week, then you have a sense of how we ended up creating this show. If you weren't, quick story. Alan and I teach a course called The Science of Happiness at NYU. Taught it for about 10 years together to about 6,000 students at this point. And we started teaching on Zoom because the students are all home due to the pandemic. And we had a really wonderful experience, and it seemed the students did too, to bring the community together, to talk about topics that were important, for them to be able to see one another and ask questions. And we thought, let's do this for a broader audience. And that is why we are here with the Happiest Hour. So thank you for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you. We also knew that we could do some good for others, which is why we are connected to the No Kid Hungry Foundation, which feeds less fortunate kids, particularly important right now during this pandemic. So while this, of course, is free of charge, we encourage you to donate, which can be done at the Krame Center page as well. Now, a couple of general guidelines here. We are all on video. You are welcome to turn your video on. We encourage people to share in this community, see each other's smiling faces or non-smiling faces to know that everyone else is here. We also have a chat box. And while the chat box will be muted, the chat box will be active, but in terms of speaking, you'll be muted. If you have something you'd like to share, and we encourage that, then press the raise hand button. We will manage to work it in, and we'll make sure that you are able to be unmuted for that. So with that said, what we're going to do is really dive into a conversation with our guest today. And we look at it for about 20 minutes or so, half an hour, and then we open it up to Q&A. But we welcome Q&A the whole time. We like to think about like a big group discussion. So if something's burning and you want to ask, go for it, please. Now, our guest today is the one and only Cory Muscara. I am particularly thrilled to welcome him. I've known Cory for, gosh, I want to say almost 7 years now. Cory was a student at the Master's in Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania, where the moment I met him, I knew there was something wonderful about him. He had this terrific combination of openness to experience and openness to learning and openness to opinion and thought, and with also a wonderful focus, a terrific focus on something that he was really passionate about, which was mindfulness and meditation. So going through that year, being able to see him sort of take in data, learn the science, and also really understand how to share it in a way that was both evidence-based and effective from an evidence base was terrific. Since then, it's been really a pleasure to be great friends with him and also to watch him make the world a better place. Cory is the founder of the Long Island Center for Mindfulness. He's certified as an integrative health coach through Duke Integrative Medicine. And he runs retreats constantly. You can hear him on loads of different meditation apps. Most recently, however, and really quite remarkably, he is the author of Stop Missing Your Life, a bestseller, easily available on Amazon. I was going to say, go to your local bookseller, but you can't. But you can go online and find it. It's a really remarkable and gentle and special and funny introduction to mindfulness and meditation. So it's a pleasure to have he and his experience and his wonderful self here. So thanks for being here, Cory.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, we had talked about something. We're going to run a question by everyone because we really want folks to participate as much as we can. So here's a question for you. And if you would answer it in the text box, that would be great. But wait to actually hit send. I want you to think about it for 15, 20 seconds. We'll cue you. It's this. If there's one thing that would make this hour that you're going to spend with us a successful hour for you personally, coming here, being here with an expert in mindfulness and meditation, and with Alan and myself, if there's one thing you can walk away with at the end of the hour to make it successful, what would that one thing be? So take a moment, think it through. We'll cue you in about 20 seconds to hit the return button. All right, now if everyone wants to hit return, go for it. Let's see. Bring back my humor, a calming environment, connectedness, lowering anxiety. Right. How Cory manages daily challenges? Peace, managing uncertainty, patience, feeling lighter, happier, connected, feeling more grounded. Coping devices, mantras, feeling peace and uncertainty.
I guess there's no pressure for you, Cory.
Yeah.
No, this is easy enough. You know, the wonderful thing about our first two talks is that to have hope, you need challenge. So we're talking about a real positive emotion, but we're also talking about overcoming challenges. And for me, meditation is so much about suffering less, but also trying to find more happiness. It deals, I think, simultaneously with both sides of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think hey everyone, it's really nice to be with you, and with so many people on this call. I don't know I'm sure a lot of you have been doing Zoom calls and moving things more virtually, and I've been surprised at how intimate a lot of these experiences can feel, especially when you put it on gallery view. So if you haven't explored that function on Zoom, it's just an encouragement, because I'm doing it now and I could see like 15 people at a time or something. And it's just great to see all the different faces that are here, which I think is also important with everything we're going through right now with shelter in place, quarantine. There's a lot of isolation, and I mean, the research always comes back to how important connection is during these times, and mindfulness, really at the heart of it, is a practice of connection to ourselves, to the world around us, to other people. And I think in the popular conceptualizations of it these days, when we think about meditation, it's often advertised in a stress reduction context as a way to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, reduce pain, suffering. And it does that. I mean, the research shows that consistently, and it's powerful for that. And it's also a way for us to connect to what is good, and to remember what is good within us, what is fundamentally pure and okay and right. The word mindfulness is actually a translation from a different word in meditation traditions called sati. And that the word sati, the actual translation of that is to remember, which is, not many people know that. And I often forget to bring that into my teachings as well. And it's remembering different things. So one way we could think of to remember is like to actually remember to be present. Being present is not the hard part. Being mindful is not the hard part. It's remembering to do it. I think anyone that's ever tried to have a meditation practice has had that experience where we have our 10 minutes of sitting and maybe focusing on the breath. And then we go throughout the rest of the day and it's like 23 and a half hours go by. It's like, where the heck was all of that practice that I did? The key thing is like actually remember to return back. But there's a bigger kind of remembering, which is more like remembering what we might call your fundamental nature, if that doesn't feel too woo-woo. And what I mean by that is like that place within you that is not your thoughts, that is not the anxiety or the sadness of the moment or the fear of the moment, and it's not the physical pain or the sensations. There's a part of you that is able to observe all of this in awareness and not be sucked into it. And in mindfulness practice, we're connecting to that part of us that has always been there. It's nothing that we're developing. You don't have to become some other person to find it. We just have to remember to touch back into that. Yeah, so I'm excited to dive into all of this with you. And yeah, Alan, did you want me to say anything more about the like the stress versus the
Well,
goodness? Or...
actually, maybe we should start off with the question of when people think of the word meditation, what comes to mind?
Yeah.
Actually, Cory, I'd be curious too to even get it from your perspective, because we know your story really well. Cory comes into our class once a semester and dazzles all the students, and then he leaves and we're like, oh, now we're not as much fun anymore. But you know, you tell a wonderful story about how you got into it. And for a lot of folks here, I imagine there's some meditators here. If we asked how many meditators there are, I imagine we get a fair amount of yeses, and some people saying I've tried. But you know, you came at it from an interesting perspective. Be curious to know your way in and how that was for you. What did you think about it? Why'd you get into it?
Yeah, right. Okay. So I think when we think of meditation teachers, there's the presumption that they must be very noble, and they got into it for very noble, purposeful reasons. I started meditating because I was trying to impress a girl. I had a hippie girlfriend in college. She was in a meditation.
That's
and
very noble, by the way. Very noble.
Yeah, very noble.
Yeah.
Part of the noble path.
I would have done meditating all the time. Seriously.
And you know, I joke about it because it was a very superficial undertaking, but that access point has really informed a real openness to people coming to this practice for very different reasons. And sometimes there's this sense that like you should only do meditation if you're interested in cultivating compassion or goodness or kindness. And like I get where the Puritans are coming from that perspective, but some people are doing this because they want to improve their focus. They want to be more productive. They just want to reduce some stress. And I think that's okay. The practice, if once we do it, starts to move through us in the way that we most need it to help us. And for me, started meditating to impress a girl, and then I found all these other benefits arise. My sleep improved radically. I went from waking up 30 times a night to only a couple of times a night. I developed this thing called paying attention. That felt like a superpower to me. And I noticed myself going throughout my day, and for the first time in my life, I really experienced a new quality of peace that was less contingent upon the external variables of my life. And prior to that, most of how I was trying to find happiness was in arranging all the puzzle pieces of my life. And then once the puzzle picture looked the way I wanted it to, then I would be happy.
You share part of your story where you went to Wall Street, right? You went to Wall Street on kind of a field trip because that was going to be your life. And it was like, right?
Yeah. We met with this multi-billionaire hedge fund manager. Everyone said, this is the guy you want to be. This is where you want to get. He gave a talk, and by the end of it, it just sucked my soul out of my body. And there was just this very clear recognition of like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I don't want to end up like him. And it's not a bash to anyone in the Wall Street world or finance. I know a ton of people in that world are very content, but it did get me on this quest of like, what does it actually mean to live well? And where I went down a particular path with mindfulness versus other modalities that you could explore this through, was I got very interested in how far can you take the cultivation of well-being that might be able to exist internally that is less dependent on external variables. I saw a lot of friends and people just going through life thinking like, once I get that, or once things align in this way, then I can relax, then I can be at ease, then I can really start my life. And nobody had reached some moment where they thought they were going to get, and then just the journey stopped. And it was just like climbing a ladder with an infinite number of rungs. And I think one of the powerful things about mindfulness is that it's a particular training that we do that allows us to start to develop a quality of contentment that can exist through the highs and the lows of our life. Yeah.
There's a lot of highs and lows going on right now, seeing where we are with this pandemic. And it was interesting. I was having a conversation with a former student who's a senior at NYU right now. We were talking on the phone earlier today, and he was saying, you know, for his class particularly, they have just gone through this massive shift where it was jobs were everywhere. You know, they could choose, and all of a sudden it's really scary times. So, you know, it's so ripe a time to be able to dive into alternate, sort of being able to explore what it means to have well-being, what success means, what it means to find happiness, whether they're ready for it or not. Here it comes. And of course, you took the completely traditional route after college of moving to Burma. So you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, sure. And so after college, at age 22, I went over to Southeast Asia. I did a 6.5-month silent meditation retreat where we were meditating every day for a minimum of 14 hours, sometimes up to 20 hours per day. Start at 3 a.m., go to bed no earlier than 10 p.m., 2 small meals in the morning. No reading, no writing, no listening to music, no contact with the outside world. And I paint the picture of austerity just because it's important to recognize that at the end of that retreat and through that retreat, I experienced the deepest levels of contentment and peace and happiness that I've ever experienced in my entire life, even while I was sleeping a couple hours a night, getting bit by mosquitoes and not eating. And and so we would to me, it pointed to just how powerful these practices can be to train the mind to find a quality of contentment that is deeper than the variables of the moment. But with that said, my teachings have also matured, I'd say, in the last decade. And there was a very young kind of ambition when I first started, which was, I'm going to use these practices to find how to get this peace that can exist independent of external variables. And then everything else in life will sort of just be gravy, like the relationship, the house, the car. I'll have that, but I won't need it. And, you know, I think a lot of people start meditation pursuits, contemplative pursuits, spiritual pursuits with that sort of intention. And I think there's the one thing I just want to caution against or make sure we're holding fully is the reality of the external world on our well-being. That we are just deeply wired as social creatures, as creatures that are part of something that is much bigger. And to try to take the perspective that, you know, we'll go in our closet and meditate our way into bliss, and that what's going on around us isn't important, I think is a form of bypassing, or what's termed spiritual bypassing, where we try to take on an identity of like, I'm going to be a happy person. And then we have a moment of sadness and we go, oh, a happy person doesn't feel sad. And we just sort of kind of try to jump around it without actually doing the work of meeting that sadness, making peace with that sadness, and embracing it as part of the whole of what it means to be human. So I think meditation, yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Cory, I love what you're saying, as I often do. And I think much as what you're saying, when I came to my own practice 15 years ago, as you know, as we've talked about, I thought I had, for anyone who doesn't know me, I have always lived with a ton of anxiety. And I thought, this is it. It's going to be the key. And I had a fear of dogs. And so really, when I went to meditate, I had this idea that if a pit bull latched on to my thigh, I would somehow be able to look down, take a deep breath, and say, this pit bull has really got my thigh. It's really got my thigh. And then I found out that it wasn't that.
We tested that theory, by the way. I took Alan to a pit bull center, a zoo for pit bulls.
That's right. Pit bulls.
Not once did he keep his composure. He tried, though. It was very impressive.
So, but I love what you're saying about the external world. And I want to bring it back to what's going on right now. Because my practice, when all of this happened, it fell apart. And then when I see that I'm falling apart a little bit, I come back to it. And whether you're thinking about meditating or you're a long-term meditator, with the externals that are going on right now, how do you think about approaching any kind of breathing practice.
But by the way, I just want to interject because not everyone here knows Alan, and I think it's important to understand the context, which is that Alan is a director of adolescent psychiatry at Bellevue Hospital, and so he has been spending time, and I find incredibly moving. I won't go too deeply into it. He's been at the hospital recently as a frontline hero worker in the ICU for 12 hours the other night. And so he's right there. So we are experiencing this, all of us, in different ways. Alan's experiencing it in a particularly unique and intense way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying that, Dan. And Alan, a big thank you for, I didn't know how much on the front lines you were, and Dan told me the other day, and I just have so much respect for what you're doing. And I'll respond to your question, and then I actually want to get your perspective as somebody that is so deeply entrenched in it, how you're making space for practice in whatever form. A meditation practice, I think we could think of as serving like three pretty key functions. One thing it does is it just helps ground us in the present moment, which is not always pleasant, but the mind has this ability to double, triple, quadruple our suffering by getting caught up in what ifs or judgments or ideas or everything that could go wrong. And it's important to make space for some of that and to contemplate so we can prepare. But a lot of times this moment is less of a catastrophe than our mind is making it out to be. So any sort of practice, and I'll talk about what that can look like in a moment, just helps reground the attention of what is actually here right now. But it also allows us to hold space for our experience. And this is a key piece of mindfulness and meditation that often gets overlooked. We know that it's a practice about focusing on the present, maybe not getting so caught up in our thoughts, dropping back into what's here right now. But often, like, what's here now is a sadness or a fear that is related to something that could happen. And when we prematurely try to, as I said before, bypass that or get rid of that, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to actually feel the reality of what it is to be human and to process and integrate some of these deeper experiences. And to get a sense of like how that can be oppressive to you, just think to any time that maybe like with a partner or a friend or family, like you came to them with an experience of sadness or pain or discomfort, and you were just looking for someone to hold space for you, to say like it's okay, or to give a hug, and it wasn't met in that way. Maybe they said like, I don't want to talk about this, or they talked about their own thing, and it just felt dismissive. When we don't create that space within ourselves, it is like a form of oppression to ourselves. And so I think when we're thinking about a practice, yeah, we want the training to be able to focus maybe more on the present and on even what could be good or what's positive. There's value to that. But the first thing is just like something that allows us to feel what we're feeling in a way that gives us permission to be human. And then from that space, we can respond versus react. I think a lot of times with the fear response, we're reacting at a more primal parts of the brain, and it causes us to do things or say things or take action that's very impulsive. And just having a little bit of space to take a breath and then say, what is the best course of action right now, can be powerful during times of uncertainty. So what can a practice look like? This is going to vary person to person. For some that are on the front lines, and I know my father's doing 12-hour shifts right now as a physician, bringing in like a formal meditation practice might be very difficult. And for these people, and maybe yourself included, Alan, I would encourage like developing this quality of mindfulness and awareness, both in your interactions and in the gaps, the small gaps that you have that often get overlooked. So a common thing I hear from people, especially in the workplace, is like, Cory, I don't, this is like pre-COVID-19. Like, I don't have any time throughout the day to meditate. Like, where can I fit this in? Like, it's just from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, like I can't find time. Everyone can find time. There are little gaps throughout the day that we're often not paying attention to, whether it's sitting at our desk and then the 15-second walk that we do to the bathroom. That's a gap of time where you don't need to be engaged in what you're doing or what you were doing. And so those are opportunities to just like feel the feet on the ground, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And you could do a walking meditation, which is as simple as walking and being deeply present with each foot on the ground. Gives us a bit of a mental break. Or while we're having a conversation with someone, and it could be in a COVID unit, but like the intimacy and the presence of just being with that person, like some of the noise in the background just starts to fade away and you give that person your full presence. Even in chaos, there can be a deep stillness in that quality of connection. And we could think of that as a form of practice. But for those of us that might have more time and more space, then we can look at a more formal meditation practice in our lives. And this could be as simple as taking a few minutes in the morning and a few minutes before you go to bed to sit down, place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and take a few breaths. And since we're together, does it feel okay for us to maybe do a couple of minutes of practice?
I think it's a really wonderful idea. Cory, I wonder what you thought of, I actually think this would be a really wonderful moment for everybody to actually unmute themselves. And for us to all, I'm not sure if this will work or if it's possible, but for all of us to really feel like we're together for a moment, as much as possible. Because actually that was, as I've said to you before, that was the biggest surprise for me about meditation. For me, helped me be with other people. That was really the most powerful part of it.
Yeah, beautiful. Cool. And the unmuting would be just to...
Oh, you can't unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Can someone unmute all of us? Is that a possibility? A producer person out there?
You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
You just received permission from our producer, so go for it.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
So maybe I'll guide us through a short practice and notice what comes up for you when you just think about the idea of meditation or moving into practice. It brings up different things for different people. For some, this feels like maybe coming home and connecting to yourself feels very familiar and comfortable. For others, it can be scary. Like we maybe spent a lifetime not being here, and being with our thoughts and being with our emotions is something that we actively guard against. And so just getting a sense of where you might be at in relationship to the idea of a meditation practice and knowing that it's all okay. The invitation will be to close your eyes if that feels comfortable, but if you prefer to keep as well. So let's do that now. If you'd like to close your eyes, you may. I have these bells with me that I'll ring. The posture can be just anything that feels comfortable for you, sitting upright but not uptight. Feet can be flat on the ground. If you're in a chair, palms down, palms up on your thighs. And I'll ring the bells, and all you need to do is just follow the sound of the bell from the moment it begins all the way until it dissolves into silence. So we'll just take the first few moments of this to settle in. Inviting the jaw to relax. The teeth don't need to be clenched. And invite the shoulders to be at ease and the hands in the belly. The mind is intimately connected with the body. And a lot of times what happens is when we're caught in mental stress, it accumulates a physical stress. So as you check in with your body, notice if there are any places that you're holding tension, or places in your body that are engaged that don't need to be. You know, I notice a lot of muscles in my face that I'm using on calls or in conversation. They don't actually need to be engaged or activated right now, and we can invite the face to completely relax. We can invite the shoulders to be at ease. We can't force any part of the body to relax, but we can make the invitation. And as we do, it helps let the mind know that we're safe in this moment. Which at the heart of cultivating presence is really feeling a sense of safety within ourselves. So given everything going on in your life right now and everything you could be doing or could be taking care of, see if you can give yourself the permission to actually just be here for a moment. To not have to fix anything. To not have to get anything done. To not have to change any part of you or the world, which can be incredibly vulnerable. There's a form of protection for ourselves we engage in by constantly trying to control the world around us or our internal experience. The reality is we often don't have as much control as we'd like to think. And a big part of practice is making space for that reality and finding a groundedness within that reality. So maybe just placing one hand on your belly. If you'd like, you could place the other hand on your heart. Feeling that you have a body that is breathing you. And you have a heart that is beating. And in each moment of attuning to that, we hold both the strength and power that comes with being alive, and also the inescapable fragility. So just see what it's like to connect to both of those. And right now we're just making space. When we let go of trying to get someplace else, fix everything, sometimes different emotions can arise. Fears, sadness, things we haven't let ourselves feel. The meditation practice creates a container for you to start to feel some of that in a way that feels compassionate and supportive and kind. Let's more specifically bring our attention to the fact that we're breathing right now. If you'd like to place both hands on the belly, you can. And obviously, in any moment, there are an infinite number of things we can attend to. Future, the past, judgments, what could happen, what has happened. We're going to keep it very simple right now and just bring all of that attention to the breath. Can we give the mind a rest? Making its only task to experience one full inhale and one full exhale. Seeing that this moment of breathing is just as true and just as real as anything else going on in the world. If the mind wanders off into someplace else, we just can notice those thoughts. You could say, "Thank you, thought. I see you. Right now, I'm just tending to the breath." Practice letting the thoughts go, like clouds passing. Just coming back to one breath, one moment. In the last minute of this, we'll practice a particular meditation called Tonglen. And what it will entail is, as we take an inhale, feel as though you're breathing in the suffering of another person or the world. So it might feel counterintuitive. We're moving closer to someone else's pain, but it presupposes that we can hold it. So we breathe it in, and then on the exhale, we offer back out whatever that person or whatever the world needs right now. Calm, ease, love, care, connection. So if it feels comfortable to do this, you can practice. We'll take an inhale, breathing in that pain, holding it, transforming it, and then offering something back out on the exhale. Let's do that 3 more times. You can breathe at your own pace. And in a moment, I'll ring the bells. Just bring your full attention to the sound of the bell until it dissolves into silence. When you're ready, you can start to reorient yourself back into the space, eventually inviting the eyes to open. So thank you, everyone, for engaging in that practice together. Yeah, it was really nice to sit with you, and just want to acknowledge that different things can come up in this. You may be having the internal narrative right now of, I really liked that. I really appreciated that. It felt really good and calming. You might also have the inner narrative of meditation is crap. I hate it. Nothing happened. I feel more anxious. And anyone that meditates long enough will experience both of those narratives at some point or another. Everything that you're going through and everything that you've been through really becomes the platform for doing the work of being in the present moment. So depending on what's going on in your life, what you're experiencing, what you've been through in the last year, 10 years, 30 years will impact the experience of what arises when you actually start connecting to yourself more deeply. It's the beginning of a powerful journey, and it's not always easy. And so there's space for all of it. And just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong.
You think it would be is there a question that we can ask folks here just about their experience that you find helpful?
Yeah. Maybe what if it's as simple as just how was that for you, or what did you experience? I'm not very complicated of a man. That's usually my go-to question. How was it for you? So if you want to share in the chat bar, that would be great. And I can continue to talk, or if Dan or Alan, you want to comment on anything.
I'm thinking there were so many wonderful shares in the beginning as to what this would look like if it was a successful hour. Some about calm, some about finding some balance, some about making space for happiness. I wonder if now we are very relaxing, emotional, surprisingly painful and surprisingly calm. I'm wondering if now might be a nice time to open up to questions. Seeing as we have about 15 minutes left, and for people to be able to ask those questions, maybe more specifically about what they were seeking, what they found today, or what would be helpful as we take what you've shared with us and develop a practice, or even just develop a mindset around what this is.
Yeah, great. That sounds good to me, Dan.
I also I want to highlight two things while people are asking questions. One is, Cory, I've always loved your voice when you're leading these guided sessions, because it's your voice. It's a very authentic voice. And one of the things you brought up is how we protect our mind by being anxious, by worrying about a million things all day. And that's really easy to do these days. And you and other people have used the word of having some compassion right now, compassion for others, but also for me, the hardest part of my practice was developing compassion for myself, because I see so many other people suffering more than I'm suffering.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, because I find when I can bring that compassion for myself, then I can get to my breath a little bit easier. When I can acknowledge that I'm suffering, even though other people are out there suffering more. And the Krame Center, which is a really amazing organization, talks a lot about compassion. I was maybe wondering if you could say a few words about that.
Tie them into some of the questions that people have asked. There have been some specific questions here about ADHD, for example, about stress, about, the folks who are here having very specific experiences. Maybe if you can tie that in, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, to questions arising as well. Yeah. Yeah, sure. So think self-compassion is one of those things that we can sometimes get heady with, like another thing to like do or do effectively, when really a lot of it is very intuitive if we actually drop into a space of presence with ourselves. So I'll give you like simple ways to think about self-compassion, and then like the Kristin Neff science version of it, and how we break it down. And I'm also simultaneously reading questions as they come through. So, you know, the hold that we did here, one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. I mean, if you're finding that you can use some self-compassion in your life right now, in your day, if the narrative in your head is intense or tough or critical, just like connecting to your body, yourself, like this place that we get so disconnected from, is incredibly soothing. And it's similar to someone else embracing us. Like if we were a young child and we were hurt, or if you were with a young child who was hurt, like one of the first things you would do is reach out to them and offer them a hug. So putting the hand on the heart, the hand on the belly, is one way that you make contact with yourself and just say, like, I'm here for you. I've got you. I've got your back. And for a lot of people, the first time they do that, it'll bring up tears because it's just so disconnected from the normal way of relating to ourselves. So I would recommend before bed, it doesn't take any extra time, just as you're drifting to sleep, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and say like, hey, you did it. You made it through another day. I know this isn't easy right now. I know there's a lot we're juggling. We made some mistakes. It's part of being human, but I'm proud of you for continuing to show up and do your best. See what it's like to offer yourself that quality of kindness and care. Kristin Neff breaks down self-compassion in 3 ways: self-kindness, seeing our common humanity, and mindfulness. So self-kindness is sort of what we just talked about here, of like talking to ourselves in a kinder way versus a judgmental way. You know, if rarely would we let other people, if other people talk to us the way we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have much patience for it. And yet we seem to get away with it for years and decades. So just starting to see like, what is the narrative going on in our mind, how judgmental it is, and just replacing that with kind thoughts. And it doesn't have to be as more complicated than noticing a judgment of you're an idiot and changing that to one of like, I know things are tough, but you're doing well. Like, I appreciate you. And start with something that feels like something that you can trust, that you would appreciate. And so just shifting the narrative to one of inner kindness. Then it's seeing our common humanity, recognizing that this fear, this pain, this anxiety is not just you. Everyone goes through these experiences. It's part of being human, and going through something difficult is wired into our DNA. Like, we come from thousands of years of people that have gotten through difficult things, that have felt fear, that have felt anxiety, that have felt loss, that have felt grief, that have felt isolated and have made it through. So just seeing that we're in good company with that, we're not alone in this experience. And sadness and grief and loss can feel very isolating. So just feeling our common humanity. And then her last prescription is mindfulness over self-identification. And we got to experience that with the thoughts. A lot of times these thoughts come up and we take them as who we are. That's my anger. That's my thought, my ideas. Instead, we take a step back and just notice how we can watch everything unfolding in our experience without taking it so seriously and identifying so strongly with it. So those 3 things are a recipe for self-compassion: self-kindness, feeling our common humanity, and connecting to mindfulness. I'm going to, and humor is essential to my self-compassion. That's great. I mean, we're all going to have our own unique strengths, and bringing that into your practice is what makes it yours. And it's how you can tailor it in a way that can be used throughout many moments throughout the day.
Well, I just want to note that, you know, all these responses, and folks are probably already doing this, when you read these responses, one of the things that came to mind, Cory, as you were just sharing that we're not alone in this. I think it's so, we're not alone. You are not alone is so key. It's key to our class. It's key to finding a level of well-being, though you're not the only one. And so if you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to walk through some of these questions in text, because you might recognize some of your own challenges in these. But to those texts again, there's some questions here that that you might want to address. The latest one is about depression. There's one about ADHD. What pops up for you?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the depression question, and I'll ping pong this with you, Alan, because I think you have good thoughts on this as well. And I think we're in the same camp that well, one, meditation is not the is not for everyone at every time, and this seems to be especially true with depression, where you know, if we close our eyes and we connect to our experience and we start noticing the ruminating thoughts, it can actually exacerbate the ruminating thoughts, or we could get more sucked into that narrative. And my suggestion when working with definitely clinical depression, but even just any sort of depression, is first get more in your body and move. So a yoga practice is a good way that gets us a little less out of our head. Go for a walk outside. And also just start to observe, and although it's hard, but like little things that are good, that are still good in your life. And Dan Tomasula, who was on this last time, has a lot to say about that in his book, Learned Hopefulness. But reviewing the day, as he says, from the day before, and just starting to see, what if I reviewed the day through the lens of gratitude instead of everything that went wrong, reviewing it through gratitude, or reviewing it through what went well. Some sort of exercise to get the body moving more, then walk outside, go into nature, and something that actually like gets you out of your head, like around you, is the first step that I would suggest.
I love what you're saying, Cory. And you know, what Cory's saying is behavioral activation, which is the most evidence-based way of treating depression right now, is really by doing things. And, you know, but even as I hear it, what's so hard is so many of the things you talked about involve going out of the house. And so it is the challenge. You know, Dan brought up that you're not alone. And I'd say in the space of mindfulness and compassion, a lot of us feel really lonely right now, but you're still not alone. That is what I keep saying to people. I know you feel really lonely, but truly you're not alone. And then they say, but I am alone. You know, by the way, the thing that makes me the saddest right now is my mom has been alone now for so many weeks. Now that is I think that's my biggest heartache in all of this. And it's really challenging. And then to do exactly what Cory said, making sure I'm on this with you right now. I'm going to be on a call with my mom at 7:30. We're going to have a drink together. Right? So to find that in the day as well.
Yeah.
We had a student last week who said, you know, we have class about 450 students. And in this text box, he said, I feel utterly alone. And the response from the students was so beautiful. We're here, reach out anytime. You always have us. Trying to shift that context just slightly can make such a huge difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Cool. I'll go through a couple more questions if it's okay. The ADHD, I think, is a good question. Even though I think as a culture we suffer from like collective attention deficit disorder, there are areas of the spectrum that are definitely much more severe and make meditation much more difficult to engage with. So if you experience, especially like ADHD, my suggestion would be not to do stillness at first, and make your meditation more of a walking meditation, where you walk outside or walk back and forth in your apartment or your room or your home over a series of steps, and just practice bringing your attention to right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. It's going to feel much less oppressive to the system than sitting completely still. But the other big thing with ADHD is just seeing that while meditation is a particular practice, meditation is like going to the gym, and mindfulness is like our fitness level. So once we see that that fitness level can be like going to the gym is one way to exercise a muscle, but you can also develop your muscles by walking up the stairs, by picking bricks in the picking bricks. I don't know who picks bricks in the backyard, or just picking stuff up, right? You also see that you can exercise this mindfulness muscle many times throughout the day, while you're brushing your teeth, while you're cooking, while you're having a conversation. So if meditation feels difficult but you're interested in this, in mindfulness itself, practice bringing that quality of presence to what you're already doing in your day, at whatever pace it is, even if it's running, exercising, or cooking. So it's a great way to start to blend it. That often feels easier.
Cory, I'm curious, when you say, incorporating mindfulness practice into your running, your cooking, like break it down. What's the first?
Yeah, what does that look like? Great. So you're cooking, you got your hand on the frying pan and one hand on the spatula. A lot of times I think when we're cooking, it's just time for the mind to go off in a million different directions. Sometimes fun, like creative stuff, but it could be ruminating, obsessing. What's a meditation practice? We give ourselves something to attend to in the present moment. The mind wanders, we bring it back. Well, here you are in the kitchen, hands on the frying pan, spatula, just bring your attention there. So where you really want to get with this is more like sensation based. So see if you could feel your hand on the frying pan, not on the frying pan, but on the handle. Feel your hand on the spatula. The getting into the sensory experience, like physical sensation, takes us out of the story of our mind and into our body. And the body is always present. The body doesn't have a story, at least in the usual way we imagine it in the mind. So stirring, attending, watching the onions fry, then bringing it over to the plate, pouring it, feel that, and just being fully present, fully attuned to it, to the sensations, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're smelling, make it a full sensory experience. And that's presence. And so once you see that you could do that in any moment, it really does become available throughout the entire day. The whole day can become a meditation. Yeah.
So listen, I know that, and I hate to do this because we're coming to the end of our hour. I want to make sure that everyone can find you, because you have some wonderful offerings, ways to engage with meditation. Also, I imagine that with all these questions that we could go on for hours on, they can reach out to you directly and engage. So would you mind?
Great. Yeah. So if you want resources like guided meditations, different app recommendations, you could just text your number to, I'll put it in the chat bar, but the number is +1 631 405 and then 4631. And what that will do is send you an automated email to your inbox with a whole host of different resources and meditations. So that will be a great free starting point for you. I have a podcast called Practicing Human, which has daily teachings, 10 minutes each day. All of that is free and no ads. And I'm co-hosting a new app called mindfulness.com. And there's a pretty spectacular 40% off deal right now. So if you go to mindfulness.com/Cory, CORY, you can learn more about that. That's launching in a week. And it's like a daily companion for you. Every day there's a video and every day there's a meditation. So I'm really excited about that.
Imagine having Cory as companion every day. I think it's happened with a lot of our students. But anyway, it's pretty wonderful. I like to get texts from him. That always makes my day too.
But before this ends, we want to thank the Krame Center again for their generosity, for organizing all of this. And Cory, for the 100+ people who were on the Zoom call, you brought some joy. So thank you, my friend.
Speaking of joy, and Cory, you know this very well, next week's guest, same time, same bat station, same bat Zoom time, is Scott Barry Kaufman. Scott is a great friend of all of ours. He's a remarkable psychologist whose new book, Transcend, redefines Maslow's hierarchy in the most beautiful way. And in a really actionable way. And he is a phenomenal person. So, and a very joyful person as well. So we really look forward to having him there. You can register at thecramecenter.org. Each of these sessions you have to register for individually. But if you go, if you stick around right afterwards, we'll have an information image that we'll put up, and it'll tell you where to go, and it'll help you out. And remember, if you can, to donate to No Kid Hungry. It's we've been doing our best, and you've been wonderfully supportive that way. So thank you all. But yes, Alan, thank you. Thanks to Cory so much for making the time and sharing such beautiful knowledge with us today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I know this is a tough time, and we're all in this together. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your practice and your presence. And thank you again to the Krame Center for sponsoring this. And Dan and Alan, I love you guys.
Oh, go on. Say it again. We love you.
I love you all. Take care, everyone.
Look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, my friends. Thank you.